All right, welcome back to All Cars Reacts, y'all. If you're new here, my name is John. It is time for another reaction video to a Motorweek retro review. This week I have chosen, as you probably noticed from the title, the 2010 Kia Soul. Now, I'm doing this one for a couple of different reasons. The first is I have been doing this arc of the Nissan Cube, the Scions, the Honda Element. I'm going to kind of bookend it here with the Soul because I should like this car, but I never really have. If you look at my love of the 80s and the 90s underpowered hatchbacks being really what people need to drive, I should like this. And I don't. I don't hate it. I'm just kind of vaguely ambivalent about it. It never makes my list, let's put it that way. So I'm kind of excited to see what they say about it. Got a couple of pieces here that, one piece of trivia I think you'll find interesting about this car. But before we get into it, there's three things I need to say. The first is, as always, you and I are just sitting down and having a conversation. Sit in your comfy chair, get comfortable, grab a beverage of choice. We are drinking some cold leftover coffee. And then the last thing new, I want to show y'all something. I finally bought myself a John Deere hat. I don't know why. I just felt like it needed to be done. So we'll put that to one side and get into it.
Your host for Motorweek, John Davis.
Well, hello and welcome again to Motorweek. We're glad to have you with us. Ever since becoming part of Hyundai, Kia has been seeking a new identity that would separate it from its parent. But since Kia is best known for inexpensive imports, it couldn't be too extreme a move. While Kia may have found their new ID with the Soul, a city dweller crossover with plenty of flash and practicality that's ready to win over a following that's all its own.
Okay, before they go on, let's talk about the styling here real quick. I've never been able to put my finger on what I don't love about this car. This generation is pretty cool. The front looks better. The back always gave me vaguely PT Cruiser vibes. I think what it is, this isn't an honest car. And what I mean by that is it's really just a small hatchback that looks kind of chunky, right? But you think about the Dodge Omni and the original Volkswagen Rabbit, right? This, they wanted to make it look more like an SUV. Now, it's never had an all-wheel drive option. It's just a commuter car, but they made it taller. They made it more chunky. I really don't like how the belt line rises up towards the back. It just makes it look chunky to me. So I think that part of what turns me off about this car is they want to tap into the SUV craze, and that just, it's not a super efficient small hatchback, but it's also not an SUV. It falls into this weird place I don't love. I actually think this generation looks pretty cool, though. I kind of like the front. I kind of like the back. I kind of dig it. But it just never quite hits that, yeah, whoo, I'd love to have one of these because they're such a great buy.
Looking young and hip, the 2010 Kia Soul joins the ranks of multi-purpose urban cruisers like Toyota's XB, Honda's Element, and the forthcoming Nissan Cube. The Soul began as a small crossover concept at the 2006 Auto Show in Detroit. The 5-passenger Soul is built on a stretched Kia Rio subcompact platform. With a 100.4-inch wheelbase and an overall length of 161.6 inches, it's shorter than either XB or Element, but a bit longer than the Cube. Appropriately, the front end of this little import wears a soulful expression defined by poignant-looking headlamps and a sliver of a grille. Once past the steeply raked windshield, the Soul's cartoony profile rises above puffy wheel flares and fast-moving creases up the flanks, while the boxy back end dons our Sport model's unique rear fascia and add-on spoiler.
And I'd like to say, I've always liked vertical tail lights. Didn't the GM minivans have that? I think it was the Pontiac Transport, if I remember. And then Volvo station wagons, of course, very famous for them. I love vertical tail lamps like that. The rest of the styling, here's your little bit of trivia. So when they say it's, cartoonish or it's puffy, I thought that was interesting. The inspiration for this actually came from the designer. Okay, so this was designed in California. Okay. He'd watched a documentary about, get this, wild boars. And he, for some reason, sketched up a boar with a backpack. And that was the inspiration for the Kia Soul. And I remember there was a quote, it was something like, the toughness and, take on the world attitude of a boar, but with a backpack. I'm not sure I see it, but I thought I'd share that with you.
The whole package sits atop 15, 16, or our testers' 18-inch wheels pushed way out to the corners. Shuffling between 4 separate trim levels, the Soul's exceptionally roomy cabin is Kia's best styling and packaging effort to date. The bold use of colors plays nicely against an artfully designed dash. The boogie board-like center stack is both ergonomically correct and has a ton of techno-urban appeal. And apart from some plasticky materials, fit and finish is not far off Toyota and Honda. Our Sport model adds alloy pedals and unique red-black sport cloth seats. They deliver good support and excellent visibility. Another nice touch is the leather-wrapped tilt steering wheel with audio and cruise controls. All Souls include power windows, locks, and air conditioning with a tilt-slide sunroof an option. But to many, the highlight of this interior will be the 315-watt audio upgrade package. Armed with a subwoofer and pulsating speaker lights, it's sure to make for one cosmically acoustic joyride.
Okay. It is going to be hard to discuss this interior without sounding like an old fuddy-duddy ranting at what's wrong with the world. However, other than the fact it has air conditioning, there's very little to like about this interior. Maybe if it was a more muted color instead of screaming at you, maybe the ergonomics would be so incredible as to offset the fact that it's just hideously ugly. Maybe the fact that I'm buying a less expensive car that hopefully is fuel efficient, and I got a 300-watt stereo out of it where the lights flash. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm as cool as they come. I mean, I've got RGB lights on my computer, okay? But it just feels, what are they going for here? It's too loud. That's what it boils down to. I can get with cars that have interesting design, especially if they improve the ergonomics in the process. But this is made for a 15-year-old. Come on.
Safety comes as 6 standard airbags and active front head restraints. The rear seat offers ample room for 3 with a 60-40 split folding feature. Under a large hatch is good, if not extraordinary, cargo room. Seats up, it's 19.3 cubic feet, or again less than XB and Element and more than Cube. But with all seats down, its max capacity of 53.4 is the least of the group. The heart of the front drive-only Soul is one of 2 twin-cam 4s. Base is an aluminum block 1.6-liter rated at 122 horsepower and 115 pound-feet of torque. All other trims use a cast iron block 2-liter with 142 horsepower and 137 pound-feet of torque. Both engines couple to a 5-speed manual gearbox, while an automatic with only 4 gears is optional with the 2.0. Government fuel economy ratings are 26 city, 31 highway for the 1.6 liter and 24 city, 30 highway for the 2.0, both on regular gas.
Okay, so I don't have a problem with the engines. I'm not going to speak to whether they were particularly reliable or if they were one of the ones that had a bunch of problems. I don't know. It is interesting that in 2010 it only had a 4-speed automatic. That sounds a little behind the times, and I'm not exactly excited about these miles per gallon. I don't remember what the Scion, the Cube, or the Element got. I haven't gone back and looked at those. I don't know. This car just feels... It's form before function. And like I said, trying to make it look more SUV-ish, because I believe since its introduction, they have marketed it as a crossover. Those decisions hurt your aerodynamics. I don't know. I'm just... It's okay. The power that comes out, I don't have a problem with it. Just not really overly excited about any of that. Just sounds mundane, I guess, except for the radio.
We managed a good 26.1 miles per gallon in real-world driving. At our track, our manual Soul 2.0 showed more spirit than we expected. It sprinted from 0 to 60 in 8.7 seconds and finished the quarter-mile run in 16.8 seconds at 82 miles per hour. The 2.0 revs in a hurry with decent oomph for a small four-banger. Shifts were fairly smooth, but with long throws. The Soul's ride and handling are the product of an independent front McPherson strut setup and a rear torsion beam suspension, which gets firmer tuning for sport trim. Stability and traction control are standard. We found our Soul to be athletically inclined but not quite sporty. It is well planted and nimble, but understeer comes in early. Body roll is evident too, although never excessive. Make the steering more responsive and we'd be well satisfied. For braking, the Soul comes standard with all disc and ABS. Hard stops were straight and stable, averaging a good 128 feet from 60 to 0 with good pedal feel. On the street...
Okay. Honestly, better than I would have expected. Overall, nothing there says, right, sports car, and it's not, but overall, I mean, whether it's the acceleration, whether it's the slalom, whether it's braking, everything just seems competent. And I'm going to come back to that at the end, I think. I don't know. It's fine. It's looks like and sounds like a well put together, buttoned down car. Cool.
The Soul exhibits a compliant ride and feels far more substantial than its size would indicate. Its easy feel makes it a natural commuter. We feel good about Soul prices too, ranging from a thrifty $13,995 to our top-level Sport at $18,595 before options. And Kia's 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty makes the price look even sweeter. Kia is clearly stepping up its products and image, and the 2010 Soul is the best example yet. This stylish little box from Korea is oozing with urban lifestyle and gives it up at a very affordable price. Add in an enjoyable-to-drive nature and a comfortable interior, and the Soul becomes one very attractive package.
All right, so what to say about this? From some of their low camera shots, I could see where it looks vaguely sport utility-ish. To see one in person, it doesn't. It just looks like a big fat hatchback. And I've already expressed, I don't think this car is focused, right? Make the roof tall, make everything kind of thick and chunky, and you end up with something that just doesn't appeal to me. And I raved about the Cube because I loved the Cube. So I do like weird interiors. You know, this just doesn't do it for me. And what that tells me is it was not designed for me. Interestingly, in spite of how low the prices are, I'd be very interested to see the demographics of who bought this, because I suspect there was quite a few older people, very much like we've talked about with Scion before. They focused it on the youth group, but then older people liked them because they had tons of space and they were easy to get in and out of and they were cheap. I kind of suspect the same thing here too. And I want to add a story here that there's a gentleman, he's actually my daughter-in-law's father. And I don't know how to describe him exactly. I think he works in IT or something like that. Very, very buttoned down, you know. Is this fiscally responsible? That kind of approach, right? He's on his second soul. And he lives in a really nice house, okay? I think he does pretty well for himself. And pretty much I think he could drive anything he wants, but he's not interested. You know, he doesn't need a Lexus or a Mercedes. This does everything he needs. And when you listen to that part of the road test, right? Understeer comes on. It's not sporty, but it's competent and the brakes are good. And what they said is it felt more substantial than its size indicates on the road. And I think that's the appeal of this car is I think Kia built a car that, well, maybe I don't love the interior, okay? You get out of it and you that unquantifiable, you feel good, right? It's hard to define. There's cars that you drive and you're like, just no. And then there's cars, even if they're not the best in the world, you're like, that one's right. It feels good. And that's part of why I think the Japanese did well for so long is that very high customer satisfaction, that the cars just felt good. And I kind of think that's what's going on here. Get aside from the, you know, it's an SUV styling and we're meant for a 16-year-old who wants to crank his tunes and have the rats driving through the city in those commercials. I think what you end up with is just a car that feels substantial. So it doesn't speak to me, but I do see the appeal for some people. And, you know, it's interesting that my son, before he got his Saab, we were talking about whether he needed to buy a used car. And he's like, just please, not a Soul. I thought he'd like it. In fact, I think it was either one of his friends or one of my other son's friends had a Soul. And they're super spacious. They're super cool. I should like this car, and I just don't. It doesn't do it for me. But the last little bit of trivia I'll leave with you, because I think I told you there's two, is why is it called the Soul? Well, it happens to work out pretty well a car has a soul, but it's actually because of how we pronounce the capital of South Korea. I think it's Seoul, however you pronounce it. We all just say Seoul. And they were like, cool, let's name a car that. Thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me here today, guys. I appreciate it. Take care.